MA. So that would have been 2008, 2009. Um, but because it's something that I do, something a community that I'm working with, my own community, in a certain sense, my research kind of started then and has continued to the present day. So I still talk to elders. I still talk to community members about my work. I provide the information to the nation itself for their own use. And then depending on what the nation or what the elders are interested in, they send me on little rabbit holes to find more and more information. But for the PhD proper, I did a lot of my work. It would have been 2011, 2012, and 2013. That's when I did a lot of the interviews for the actual project. And it started out not so heavy on the interviews. So the first, the first few months of the project was actually meeting with elders, talking about what the project was, answering their questions, kind of engaging, and from there building into actually conducting interviews. If people were interested in doing it. But yeah, it's been an interesting journey. Is what I would say.
I have two more questions. What you mentioned engaging. Like, how did you engage?
A whole host of ways. So this could be anything from meeting with elders committees. So all three nations have an elders committee, so you can meet with them and talk with them, eat with them. That could be that. It could be one-on-one meetings with elders or certain elders. It could be visiting family members, talking with chief and council. There's a whole host of ways that I actually do that. And, sometimes depending on what was happening and depending on the time of the year, could be anything from going hunting to simply being out on the land. So a lot of different ways of actually engaging with the community.
Uh, you mentioned from 2021 till 2023, you were interviewing, collecting data. You had so many interviews, 24 elders. How did you piece it all together? How did you analyze? Like, what was your coding process or?
Yeah, well, I had closer to 61, I think 70 some interviews, depending on how you want to count it, because some of the elders I actually interviewed more than once. So it's a lot more than that. The basic way that I went through it was actually we had recordings if the elders were okay with it actually being recorded, and then taking notes based on the recordings of what elders were talking about, time stamping those notes. And then as I was actually working on the writing, listening to the recordings to hear what the elders had actually stated. So that was the main way that I went through with regards to kind of piecing it all together. And with regards to the analysis, it really was trying to capture what elders were actually saying. And if there were any issues with regards to what they remembered, and in some instances, people would say, "Well, I'm not actually sure about the date," and stuff like that. Really kind of taking that as not necessarily this is wrong, but as that the information that is still there is still valuable, but maybe they don't necessarily have a precise date. So kind of capturing that sense there. But for the most part, I would say a lot of it was just listening. And I've always found that it's really, really beneficial to actually listen to the elders, not challenge the elders. And then, you'd be surprised how things that you might think at first are wrong actually aren't. So I mentioned that because there were some elders who talked about how when the water came up for the reservoir, it was before 1968, and at first face value, it looks like, oh, they just misremembered the date. But then when you actually look through the BC Hydro records, um, there was some flooding prior to 1968. So 1968 is when they finally closed the dam, and the water definitely comes up in a very big way. But there was flooding prior to that point in time. So it's not that the elders are wrong. It's just that they remember the earlier flooding events.